Welcome back, all my 40k fanatics out there. I'm DJ here with Tim's Nation to bring you my list that will be facing off against Lane later tonight and his Death Watch. This is a rematch from our match last week. Afterwards, there was a couple things that Lane really wanted to try out. Some changes to his list and things like that. And again, these are lists that we are trying to get to a competitive level. Our anticipation is when we take these lists to a tournament, we're trying to go 5-0. We're trying to win the whole thing. Is that how it's always going to happen? No. But we want to go in there with what we feel at that moment in time is the best case list that we could put together. On top of the fact, for me personally, one thing that I love about list construction is creativity. Being able to create something that is different than what everyone else is running, unique in how it runs, and bring a different aspect to 40K that you may not regularly see, not the same old song and dance. And that's what I'm bringing here today. So Lane is doing a heavy, devastating wound list, as we saw last week. There's a lot of damage without even saving. I'm not building against him, but devastating wounds are something to definitely think about, as well as other different wound categories in the game, as well as the scoreboard. The scoreboard is a primary focus for the way I've been looking at the Hypercrypt Legion and building lists. Much like with Grey Knights, I played that first game, my first game of 10th edition. And after playing that, I looked at Grey Knights and was like, this is what I want, this is what I need. After playing that game with Necrons, that was uncomfortable. You know, I still was able to score 91 off a lucky gambit. And even so, you know, I could have picked up some primaries and still pushed a decent score out of that game. It didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel okay with how things were running. So I made some changes, went a little bit of a different direction. And I got a couple of things that are interesting theories that I don't think we've seen a lot in 40K right now, in any army construction really right now. So that's something I'm going to try. If it works, I will be making more videos on this later on in the week, talking about this, talking about my theory behind it, making sure I have all the rules in check, everything. And again, anyone who knows me and knows my channel, what I try to do is bring together all the information. The only reason I haven't talked about these over the weekend is because I don't want to sell it if it doesn't work. I'm not going to put it out there and say, hey, guys, here's something new I'd like you to try out, like you to talk about, like you to see, if it doesn't work and isn't efficient. Because I don't want some people who only can get maybe one game a month, go, oh, I got this real cool idea, and it just doesn't work, and then they have a sour feeling. So, with that all being said, first of all, as always, can't leave a YouTube video without it. Please subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell for notifications if you haven't already. You get notified on all the content we bring here on the channel, including Lane's army list that we'll be posting the next day. Today, I will be posting this one earlier than normal because I want to, for a couple of reasons. One, I'm in all my Steelers stuff. And right now, the Steelers are still in it because they delayed the game. So, hey, I got to post it early. But more importantly, I want to give an opportunity to see what we're talking about here and some of the other stuff in previous videos. And then if it does work, there's a lot going on in my mind that is like, okay, you need to do this, do that, do this, do that. So this video is coming out before Lane's. Lane's video is going to be out tomorrow and showing his list, and the battle report following the next day, as I've done in the past. But this will be up early. This will be up today after I finish recording this. I'm going to go edit it and throw it out there. Just to start to, this is unique. Then I'm going to talk about what I'm thinking uniquely with this, and kind of maybe also some other people out there get those creative juices flowing, go, you know, that's not a bad idea. That might work. Or someone say, hold on, danger, red light. You're not thinking about this, that, or the other. So we're going to start with that today. That's how it's going to be. And with that being said, let's jump over into the list. Talk about what I'm actually bringing today. All right, here we go. Hypercrypt Legion, Volume 2 for this rematch. Definitely some changes from my last list. A lot smaller and a lot beefier in some ways. And also, we have a new hero coming to this list. And that is going to be where we start. So today, we will be bringing a 10-man squad of Lich Guard, led by my converted version of Trazyn. That is right, Trazyn, in a competitive 10th edition list. Call the papers, call the press, it has happened. Trazyn is here. And yes, I took him because he has his own abilities that I wish to utilize in this list. So the Lich Guard, without the Technomancer, a little squishier, but they're still 4-up invulns. They still have 2 wounds apiece. They're still bulky as they are. And since they have a noble with them, that makes it even better. Having the noble makes them reduce damage, reduce the roll to wound by 1, as long as the weapon is higher than their strength characteristic. So that's a bonus, making it a little harder to kill them. But for the most part, these guys are going to play a role of holding on to objectives. Trazyn will give them sticky objectives, so they'll be able to sticky that objective and then move on to something else out of the Hypercrypt Legion. With what we've just seen with the new FAQ, I would have to spend a command point to basically drop these guys onto a new objective, but that's okay later into the game, because I do have another speedy onboard objective getting unit, which we'll talk about next after I finish with these guys. That means I don't need to necessarily use these guys in the early set points of the game. Now, Trazyn also has the ability that at the beginning of my command phase, he can choose to eliminate one of my other characters from my army. And there's a list of ones you cans and cans, but I have all the ones you can in this list. But Trazyn will take over that spot and be able to lead that squad, giving that squad then sticky objectives. Well, the sticky objective factor triggers at the end of the command phase. So if he pops off and takes over a spot of a unit that's on an objective marker, he can immediately make that squad have sticky objectives, and then during my movement phase, they can move away as they've already sticky that objective, which could lead into some possible combinations that I'm really wanting to try out, especially with my second big objective getting unit, the Wraiths. So the Wraiths are fast. Wraiths have a 10-inch move. Wraiths have a auto advance 6 by the Technomancer leading them, because I gave them that enhancement. So they will be able to just move 16 inches and just jump on an objective. These guys are fast, beasts, move through walls, everything that you would want in a unit to go and get primaries. Also, because once again with Trazyn, if I take Trazyn and pull him off the table and kill off the Technomancer in this unit, yes, I would lose the feel no pain. Yes, I would lose the healing. Yes, I would lose the resilience. But now we immediately sticky the objective the Wraiths are on. Yes, they'd be tethered down to a 5-inch moving guy, but they still can move and drag him along and charge and everything like that to be able to then push into another objective, center field, or go after another secondary, as that objective they were holding is now sticky. And in most cases of the game, by the time we do this, looking at turns 4 and 5, that objective marker is probably mine. There's probably not anyone going back over there and getting it. So a lot of my primary game plan is around the Lich Guard and the Wraiths being able to hold 2 objectives for a good portion of the game, and then move into a position to be able to take another. Now, again, once the Lich Guard's sticky an objective, if Trazyn leaves them, I can still pick them up and put them somewhere else and use this 1 CP strat to drop them in anywhere on the board outside of 3, and that can be on an objective marker. So these are going to be the guys that are going to be playing my primary game for the most part. But we also have a secondary game to worry about. And with this Hypercrypt Legion, the secondary game is one that I really want to make sure I emphasize on. Now, granted, the Wraiths and the Lich Guard can take care of some secondaries, defend stronghold, extend battle lines, even help on the engage on all fronts, or possibly even investigate signals. So there is stuff that they can do to assist in the secondary game. But what about when we need to get across field and deal with that stuff? We have 2 squads of Ophidian Destroyers. The Ophidian Destroyers are able to pick up and deep strike anywhere on the field. That is their ability. So they don't even take from my Hypercrypt ability of how many I can pick up and drop where I need to, which is good because I do have a lot of players in this game that I want to pick up and drop and do all that stuff with. The Ophidians, really, that's their only role. Their combat is not the best. They have a good amount of attacks. They can go well into some light infantry, but that's really going to be about it. Next up, we have 2 5-man squads of Immortals. These have Tesla and will also be led by a Chronomancer. The Chronomancer gives them fire and fade. So, with these guys, because these are each objective control value 2, being as their battle line units, most of them get that. What I'm looking at with these guys is the fact that because of that fire and fade effect, I can bring them on strategically, wholly within 6 inches, and I can shoot and then advance onto an objective, or move onto an objective marker. They can move, advance, shoot, and move a little further. They could drop within 3 inches of my opponent's home field objective marker, not on it, shoot, and then move and steal my opponent's home field objective marker for 2 things. 1, possibly put my opponent on a 0 on primary early on in the game and get really into their head about what's going to happen later, or even score 8 points off capture enemy outpost, which can sometimes be a very difficult one to score and is a fast 8 points if you're able to pick it up. These guys could also be targets for Trazyn to jump in there and give them objective sticky objectives, and then move away and do investigate signals or something else. But for the most part, these guys are in there to play a different game, to be able to be, because of their objective control value, because of the fire and fade, and because of the access to a stratagem that allows me to drop within 3 inches, there is some very interesting things that could happen off these guys. Now, one of the Chronomancers will be a little more defensive with him, because he is going to have the enhancement that allows me to pick up an additional unit when I do the Hypercrypt. And I really feel like I need that, because there's a lot of other good choices in this list that I want to make sure I have the one. Plus, it's relatively cheap. So moving over into, let's see, we got 2 other things. So first, I had about 200 points left over. And with the 200 points that I had left over, I had a choice between some different type of offense and stuff. And I decided I'm just going to go Locust Heavies. I love the Locust Heavy Destroyers. Auto 6 damage, just the straight 6 damage for a hit that goes through is amazing. So being able to do that is just so cool. These guys have an 8-inch move. They can do a lot of work from the backfield. I could pick them up. I can bring them out from strategic to get lanes. They're just very, very powerful, very cheap weapons. At 50 points a model, I invested 200 points in just taking these guys. Now, with tweaks of the list, these guys may end up doing other stuff, becoming other things, or leaving. But as of right now, this is what I feel is what I need. These guys have very, very strong, high damage output. So we're going to let these guys run again, especially out of this detachment. And last, surely not least, we are going not 1, not 2, but triple Catan. We will be bringing the Nightbringer and 2 Transcendent Catans. Now, with this list in the future, if I stick with this route and keep running it, I'll probably build and convert another Ghost Catan to replace my Catan of the Beholder. But this Beholder was always brought into my collection to be another Catan. His base size is correct. And, I mean, the Beholder's just cool. Like, I'm not a huge D&D fan, but, man, I love the Beholder. I always thought he was really cool looking. So we will have 2 Transcendent Catans and the Nightbringer. I am real excited to see the Nightbringer in action in this. One issue I've always said with Catans is that there is their speed. They can't advance and charge. They can't advance and do a lot of anything, really. So you can't really move them across the field in an effective way that doesn't just make them like a floating piñata that you blast until all the candy falls out. Well, now out of the Hypercrypt, and especially with the FAQ to the stratagem, you can spend a command point. You pick up the Nightbringer, because he is a Necron unit, spend a command point, and place him anywhere on the field, at least more than 3 inches away from the enemy. Granted, he cannot charge afterwards, but a full health Nightbringer right in your opponent's backfield is going to be more than just a nightmare to have to deal with. The Katans are very interesting. They have deep strike. They can advance and translocate around the field. So leaving them on there means I can bounce them over to an objective marker and stuff like that. These guys have a lot of very interesting play out of the Hypercrypt Legion. And there's a lot to be said about them. This list, with how much I have playing on secondary objectives and trying to score primaries and doing stuff like that, I needed some damage. I needed some stuff that could hit. And I felt like this was a time where I finally am going to play 10th edition Katans. So yeah, I have been not against Katans, but they had such an obviously good stat line. Their toughness, their abilities, their attacks, their defense is just insane. I've always felt like, yeah, they were an obvious choice, and at some point in time, I would start moving in and using them a little more. This is the first time that I'm going to use them. And the reason why this so much more than others is because a lot of times in the past, when I start building a list and put a Catan in there, I look at it and go, yeah, but I could put a third unit of this, or I could put more of this, or I could put this character in to boost this. And when I'm looking for the points to finish off combos in my list, the Catans eat up so many of them that it was easier to go without them and say, well, if I cut the Catan, I can get the third unit of X, plus I could actually get Y. So let's go that route. And that was always a time that in my mind it justified not running the Catans, especially in Canoptic Court, where you don't receive as many buffs for the Catans as you would to other units that you could get in there. Now, with Hypercrypt, the Catans actually get a boost for the detachment as well, especially that deep strike alone. Being able to drop in the Nightbringer just outside of 3 inches is just going to be in your opponent's head. It's like, hi, I can't charge with him. I'm going to gaze at death, which is very strong. And now you have to deal with that Nightbringer being in there. That's going to mess with people, especially because you can get the Nightbringer in weird angles and stuff that it's like, oh, okay, you need to put your entire army on him, but you can't. So now here we are. And people are going to be like, do I want to even charge him? Where he can just sweep and clear a whole bunch of infantry. It's just, there's a lot with him in this detachment now. And while I say the T-Catans and the Nightbringer being just thrown in your face while you're dealing with that, I have all these other units that are just, okay, what are my secondaries for the turn? All right, so I need to be here, here, and here. Cool. Oh, I need to be here, here, and here. Cool. Push the Catans, do everything out here. Now, I said there were some concepts that was different than what we see in 40K before. And that is the fact that I will be looking at my opponent and their primary. And because of what I have with the Immortals, there's going to be a couple of times where I'm going to look at the table and try to find an opening to just go, I'm going to hit your objective and drop you to a 0 on primary. I'm going to lose those Immortals in the next turn, but I'm going to put you a 0 on primary. Now, I do run 7 characters, right? 3 Catans, 2, 4, 7 characters. Someone going into Assassinate could be a problem, especially with me pushing the Catans like I am. On the other hand, if they take Assassinate, then they're taking something else that deals with board control. And if with how much coverage I have, I feel like I could stop half of that secondary game. And at the same time, too, they have to kill 5 of my characters, leaving me with only 2 remaining. Okay, so that means all 3 T-Catan and Nightbringer have to die. You have both Chronomancers would then have to die, leaving me with Techno and Trazyn at the end of the game. Chronos, yeah, probably. But all 3 Catans, all 3 of them, not a single one of them. And if my opponent takes Assassinate and they go and stick with that as a main one, it could lead me into a point where I go, okay, I'll push the Nightbringer, but I'll keep these characters back here. You know, if you don't kill the characters, I just deny secondary points from you. And because of the list speed and because of what it can do, I could actually avoid giving my opponent those secondaries. So a lot of this is not only just going to be how much I can score in points in general, but it also is a sense of how I can affect the primary score. In most games where players will draw cards, it's difficult for me to say, okay, how am I going to deny your secondary? Because you could draw whatever, and then by the time it starts to deduce down on what could potentially be left for you to draw, that's going to be tough. Resources are limited at that time. But primary is something that from the get-go, from the beginning of the game, I will know what and how we score primaries. So that's going to be a very, very big focal point of stopping the primary score as much as I can, or reducing it as much as I can with these units like the Immortals, which are small, they're compact, fast, and able to break a lot of rules based on their abilities and loadouts. So that is the forefront of the list. Some of the stuff that may, as I play this against Lane, and as we get this game out, there is going to be some things that this week I'll talk about more. And if, by all means, questions in the comments section, I'll try my best to answer them. And we'll see how this all goes. I have a lot of faith in this list. I really feel good about this one. You know, I've talked a lot of bravado, very big wrestling fan. I would say, if anything, I got more of that heel persona, you know, the good, the bad guy, but not totally the bad guy type thing, like old school WWE Chris Jericho back when he was in WWE. Not talking about all the allegations going on with him now. I'm talking about in-ring Chris Jericho. You know, he was the bad guy, but you still liked him because of the funny things he did. One of my favorites was The List, where he just stood there with a list and actually stood through a whole commercial break before he told someone they made the list. And all that stuff was hilarious. And I feel like that's sometimes more my heel persona. That's not what today is. Today is, I really feel like could be a very, very comfortable list that I could actually make more with this. And if that is true and it does work, then absolutely, then I will totally be bringing back the bravado. I will be ecstatic. Heck, who knows? Maybe I'll even wear a cape. I don't own a cape, so don't hold me to that one. But who knows? Maybe a crown, maybe another trophy. Maybe this will be what I take into the tournament once we finish and get all the rest of the rules and everything established and get through the holiday season. I'm actually, even as a Clevelander, I was rooting for the Browns. But as a general manager in a restaurant, I am glad that that's over with. We got the Super Bowl coming up, because then it goes right into March Madness. And it's just like, whew, that was unprecedented butt kicking this whole time through. It's been a completely new thing out here in the city of Cleveland to see a winning football team and how much more business that drew and how tired we all are. So now, I've said it a couple times, I just need to stop saying it. That's probably my problem. Hopefully everything is going to get quiet for a little bit, at least until February. Also, Lane and myself have been getting ready for our team event on January 27th. We'll be traveling out to North Coast Games and playing in a 4v4, 2v2 tournament. I know a lot of numbers there, probably didn't make sense. We have 4 players on our team, and we'll be separating into 2 teams, 2v2, playing each round with a different partner and playing against another team in that tournament. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a big event. I'm real excited about it. I'll be taking my Great Knights to that one just because I'm very, very comfortable with them at that smaller point scale versus the Hypercrypt, which I'm still figuring things out for it. Great Knights have a little more resilience just built in with some 2-up saves and 2 wounds. Necrons are fancy. Very fancy. I like the fancy, but we need more practice with the fancy. All right, I've rambled. I've gone on enough. It's a lot of exciting things going on here, man. It's gonna be some fun. But right now, list is locked in. This is what we're bringing tonight. I didn't have plasma sights in there. I am gonna throw plasma sights in with the Ophidians. I have those guys over on the shelf. I realized when I was recording the video, I was like, oh, you know what? I get those for free. Forgot about them. But yeah, they'll have their plasma sights. I mean, they are what they are. They if in that one situation I can be able to proc into dev wounds, Cool. I mean, why not? It's free. So, all right, that's everything here. Guys, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.